So first of all, I'm going to show you what I want to kind of see, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over what I think I saw today, more or less, and kind of what I expect. So I just want to get what I want to see out of the way. So just anyone tuning in, it's a little bit easier that way. I think that format's going to be a little bit easier, and then we can show some of these other things. And of course, I'll have a timestamp. Probably, I think I'll have the energy to do a timestamp after. These take like another 30 minutes altogether to do these, but let's get into that. So check for the timestamp below. Anyway, let's go to Bitcoin real quick because this is the first thing that we're going to see. So for Bitcoin, it's really the same thing. We've just been riding down this line. There hasn't been really much of a change. I didn't like this because this is our whole range here. I think it makes much more sense to kind of wait for the market on some of these things. But I'm not entirely surprised that we pushed up. I will say one thing. So while I'm not entirely surprised that we pushed up, because what we really want to see here is when we end under it, when we start under it, we want to see it close to it. We don't want to see any other trend because really any sort of trend that forms here is really just a target. This is just a target up, right? So just because we're in the channel here doesn't mean we have to go to the bottom of the channel. We have to break a trend on a shorter time frame really to push down. So in that same sense, I believe, let's see what price this is that we're going to be looking for. So this is what 1614. So this is what 115. So we're looking at 19,000. So if we just take 115, this is what 19,049. So what we're going to look for is to say 19,050. It's a little bit easier. We can just wherever it's easier. So 19,050. I'd like to see this start above this, and I think we'll get something that's pretty nice from it, um, or at least it'll somewhat be safe. So I think there's definitely still a decent chance that we start under this. In that same sense, I don't like to be in it. I think though, for what I believe for Bitcoin is that if we really do see a lot, I think a lot of the development is going to be over the weekend. And that kind of gets to what I think about the market and kind of where that leaves us. So I think the biggest thing from the market really will be next Monday as more of a determining factor. But I do think Bitcoin will have a decent chance based on what we see tomorrow. So what do I want to see for Apple in a sense is just coming back to the 4 hours because these are the relevant time frames around us. We do have this line here, this trend line coming down before. I'm too lazy to show it, but it's like boom, comes down from quite a while away. So what do we want to see? I was talking yesterday is it would be really nice if we'd start up here because then it's well, technically for the market it's horrible because most of the targets are hit. So what we can see is towards the end of the day, a lot of targets started getting hit, right? So we kind of gapped back up, or we just reached back up to a lot of these places. So we didn't come all the way up to where I think it's horrible. We can kind of see both of these averages just wedged right here. So we didn't come all the way up to here, but what we did that kind of started a lot of this. Actually, let me just say what I want to say. Essentially, short area. If we do start somewhere up here, in my opinion, I think this is also a pretty powerful short area. If we do start under here, I think this is wait to see if we see a 4 hour start under. And that's just how I kind of feel. And just to show in a sense, what I'm looking for the week time frame is this will be, I don't know where the line is. It's supposed to be, what is this? 60. If I remember, this is supposed to be right about right there, more or less. So I think it's going to be 151.19 actually. So essentially what I'm looking for the next week is I think it looks pretty bullish. This is where it'll meet up here. And essentially what we're looking for is we have an extension under that creates this, gives it obviously blah, blah, blah. We know why it's pushed up, things with the VIX and all that. But the nice lower high, and this does give us a chance to get a lower high here if we do start within this range, even if we start a little bit up. And then it gives us a chance to try to push up a little bit. We could sit here for like another week and really try to build something. But I think this looks really nice, even if nothing else, just from the perspective of we started out of this range that we can just see up here. We started out of this range between these two. And we see boom, boom, boom. So we start out of it. So this is a little bit dangerous. And we got overbought on this week time frame. We're way overbought. So any collapsing down really could bring us back down. Um, even tomorrow. So there is, I think, a great incentive to keep it in this area for bulls to make it look nice. I don't think most people want to see the market drop off anyway, and it seems like a reasonable kind of place to hold it. And so for that, I think this 4 hour is really a big part of a lot of this. So let me do this real quick. We'll go because this is the underpinning of a lot of this stuff. The VIX, we don't really have to look at too much anymore because it'll probably start in somewhat of a bearish place for the market. We'll just have to really see with that. So let's do this, and we can kind of just go through this with the market today, and we can see. So just to say one more time, I think if we start up here, this is sketchy. I think it's okay if we start here, but not really the best. Actually, I think it's pretty decent we start here because we could easily have a repeat of what we had here. But at the end of the day, I don't want it to push up too much because I could still see something like this pushing down. I really think the goal at the end of the week is really just to keep it in a place where we can have it start somewhere in this area. We don't want it to start too high because then it's really sketchy if we have to ever come back down to test on that week time frame, which I do think it really will. So let's look at this now. Let's do this. Let's get this out of the way. And so now we see the 4 hours. So let's go to like the 30. I think that was like the biggest determining one. I mean, obviously we're going to see a 15 too, but just remember this is going to be the 4 hour 500 hole. We can just do 4 hour 500. We can note here. And so let's just kind of see what's happening. So the first kind of real thing, I really wanted to see this push back up. I mean, this would have been the most bearish thing if we really did just push up to here. Because then why do we even buy up on it for anything? And we have the whole day to just continue downwards. And any 4 hour end under here is probably going to get wrecked. So we just kind of gap back up to where it was here. I think that's pretty reasonable that it sells down there also. But there was a bit of overselling, and we can see the first bit of overselling more or less came here. I don't think this is really too bad, but we can see here. So we get our first 5, 15, and 30-minute ending under the relative time frame, which is the 30-minute. So we can see a pretty nice place to take a position here, and then you can kind of let it ride. But the issue here is that we oversell, and then we can see that we actually start above here, and then we push. And so this is really the impetus for a lot of why we were pushing up, more or less in a sense. And then we can see that we have this, looks nice. This was a little bit sketchy. We started under. I don't think this was, I don't think this was a buy because it started under. Now we see it starts up. It's hard to argue with this. I really wanted to see this come back down. I think if we came back down, this would have looked a lot better instead of having this push up at the end of the day. But what we can see here is on the 4 hour change, we get a 4 hour change here. In my opinion, pushing up way too much through here. We have this big trend line coming through. We ended under it. There's no reason to push this up. To be bullish right now, in my opinion, is not to buy on sells. It's to protect a certain level. To me, that is what bullishness is right now, protecting these certain levels down low. And so what we didn't really do, first of all, is we did start above, but we never confirmed on it. I would have much more preferred this, and then we'll kind of see on the week time frame. If we had this, well, let's just do this real quick. So if we just look at the week time frame like this, and then we go back to the 4 hour, if we look at it this way, even when we start the next week here, so it would be like here, we still have a chance if we did come down to still have this nice, and this nice. So, and we already would have tested this area with an extension under. So this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to see it come down. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that we didn't even touch it. We're very top heavy. And we have because we have it's a big overextension. I mean, even if we look at the 4 hour, ignoring the 30 minute or whatever that was like around here, that overselling, overextension, the big overextension on the 4 hour. What's really nice about that though is when we start back up, it gives us the chance to be able to keep this lower high, and it just makes things look a lot nicer. And we also lose this just for tomorrow anyway. So this is one of the things, if we do start here tomorrow, that's going to be tough about it, is that if we do start here, this isn't here. We're starting under all of our support. I think this is very likely to happen. And so we come back up, maybe we hit here. This is where the bulk of the switch over and a lot of buying happen. Much more likely to push down. We're oversold on the week, and I think we can push down. And so what I would expect if we do have something like that, if we do start under 151.21, is that we are going to come down to this day 200 at 146.55. It could be, I think it's 146.55 is what it's going to be tomorrow. At most, it's going to be 146.60. And I do believe from there we will press back up and probably end the day up in this area. I think it's both good for bears and bulls. We'll be at the end of the week. I don't think there's anything could happen, but I don't, because we did start under and have this huge buying up, so it could just get wrecked through. But I think in one sense, it makes a lot of sense for bulls that want to keep it in this area, and any sort of bear will have wrecked this trend here and it won't exist. And so I think coming back up and ending and starting somewhere here is pretty nice because we're going to be so close to the average itself. We could push up a little bit. VIX already looks good. I don't think this really makes it look any worse at whatsoever at all. And I think there's a huge chance that we could push under, we can break whatever's going on here, and then attack this place back down. So that's kind of what I'd be looking for. And it really extends to a lot of these stocks also as well. So I think the safest time is to really wait until next Monday to see where things form. But I think we'll get a really good idea of what's going to happen today, depending on whether we start somewhere like around here or we start here. So we could start here. We have 2 4 hours. So we could start here, then push under here. Because we only have 1 4 hour left, I still could see it doing that where we drop to the 146.60 towards the end of the day and trying to come back up. Um, I still do think it's possible just because we're so overbought. We'll really have to see though. But I do still feel like it's pretty possible. I think it's a lot more possible if we do that at the beginning of the day. And so there's not really much to look at with the NASDAQ and the other ones. If we're looking for something on the NASDAQ, we're looking for it to come back above the 4 hour hole. It's currently all the way up at 11,741. The SPY's also off a cliff, so I'm not really too concerned with this also as well. The 4 hours there, the days here, the 2 and the 1 are higher than the 4 in the day. So, um, so that kind of is what it is. I don't see any direction from that anytime soon. And the Dow's also completely off a cliff. Now, people could be bottom buying this from that perspective, but that doesn't, none of my averages are here. So it's kind of like whatever. I'm just referring to Apple for most of this, and it seems to it just seems to be the easiest way to kind of look at a lot of this stuff. So we are still on a cliff. We haven't significantly proven ourselves with anything. We have high wicks up and down. Down is fine. We needed to not push up so high. We need to just maintain in this general area, um, so that we can try to get a nice start next week. And that's pretty much the sense of that. So one thing that, one thing that is pretty nice about the VIX, we can see that we have some, it's okay for what it is here. It's not the best. It looks a lot better when we look at it on the 4 hour, especially what's been happening through here. We can see the day was here and here. And so what we can see recently, yes, we hit this yesterday. We started all the way up, we bounced, right? So we keep starting pretty high, which kind of is what it is. So it's not surprising to me that some of these have a little bit of issue. But because we did dip here, it is possible that we do have a really bearish day tomorrow. And we can see, I'll put it this way. So if we do see it start here, if it does start really close to this area, slightly above 27.31, 27.32, with that, I would be pretty inclined to expect, and now this does, I'll finish the sentence. I would be inclined to expect this to actually start under here and us to have a pretty bearish day tomorrow, at least to 146.60 or 146.55, somewhere in that range. That is what I would expect. I do think this looks really nice at the end of the day for just in general, like we did break this, but if we do start here, I think it looks pretty decent. I would expect that we could have a decent chance of holding tomorrow into Monday, a nice start if we can start here, because there's a little bit of weakness that this will show, and that does give a little bit more of a chance of a cooling off with the VIX. I don't know what happened here. It's kind of crazy. I'm not sure if all the derivatives based off the VIX went with this or what, but we could see some cooling off. And so if we do start here, I would expect more likely that we have a greater chance. I mean, it just seems obvious because, right, you usually aren't going to go from the top to the bottom. Just in general. So we start in this middle area. I think it's kind of like the in between. I think that would be the best for both sides tomorrow because I think it would be a decent compromise because it's not too bearish or too bullish. Because if we do start here, like I said, I think in pre-market a lot of stuff is going to get hit pretty hard. There's not a lot of room down because we're right above both of the supports, and we have a pretty decent structure on us to push up. And so I definitely think we'll see, if we do see that, we'll see a combination of that and something starting under the 4 hour, and then we'll push down at least to that 146.60 tomorrow. And so in that same sense, I think that's pretty bad for Bitcoin as well. We'll just have to see what happens with stuff. It doesn't mean just because we start above in Bitcoin doesn't mean it can't get pushed down under. So we'll really have to see when we get the weekend for Bitcoin. Of course, we have our Friday end of market Friday, so 4 o'clock Eastern. We'll get our day signal, and then we'll also have I'm so tired. We'll have a Saturday and Sunday, right before the other markets open. Now the Hang Seng could be an issue. That is something that I mentioned the other day, and it did start all the way down here, but it is a month time frame. Now we haven't seen a week end under here. So we do have one more day, and I imagine they'll probably try to get the week to end somewhere up here. So I'm not really that worried about it where it is now. But we do have one more trading week after this one for the month. So I would be quite concerned. The main thing I'm concerned about is not if we end somewhere here, it's the closer that we end to the bottom side of it. The closer that we end to the top, the better I feel about it. But there's not much when you look at it on a day turnover. There's only so much room to go. Now this is nice. So if we do have something here, I could still see it pushing up. But anything, it depends what happens on the short term anyway. But I still don't like it overall. I'll just kind of put it that way. This isn't that crazy of an extension. That necessarily means like okay, anywhere here is going to try to push back up, right? Because on the short term, we care about the actual individual trends that are forming here. So we do see it's like somewhat nice of a candle. I don't see why we can't push up. We have a huge gap here, so I don't see why they can't target it. So I don't think this is really a huge deal. So that's pretty much that. And I think what I'll do here is someone mentioned whatchamacallit. What is it? Ripple. I guess I can go into Ripple a little bit more. I don't know if I really want to spend time. Let's see. I guess I can just go into Ripple. So my kind of concern about Ripple, where I'm not a huge fan of it, we do have this up on the day, but we have this on the week here. So it's a little bit concerning to me. If this was day week, then I'd be like, okay, this seems pretty doable. But for me, this is something I would expect maybe we hit up at 5,800 or maybe we can get something up here depending on how we start tomorrow. Now for Bitcoin where it is, if we remember, I think it's more likely that we just trend down because we don't, at this point, looking at the way I look at it, at this point, we don't want to start too far ahead or too far above 19,050. And even dropping another 150 bucks isn't that big of a deal. We've seen it in some of these places. Starting here, we're very close to support. We can push up. Even on this day, even though we can't see it, if you check on September 14th when it started, I think it pushed up a little bit, barely, and then it pushed down, and then we pushed up. This was only after the market opened the next day that it pushed down like that. So we're still looking for that. Um, this was something that started under, so just ignore this. So anywhere in this range is fine. We don't want it to start all the way up here because then it's going to switch over here and then it's going to be a lot higher of a chance. Like maybe people push this up and it's all about the trend that forms then. We want the smallest amount of trend when we come down to test. That's just the easiest kind of way to go about these things. Da, 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 da. I mean, I like the way Bitcoin's been acting with a lot of the stuff. I think a lot of stuff has just been going up because of Bitcoin. Where we left yesterday, I already talked about this earlier, so I'm not going back over that again. I remember. Um, let's see. I guess we can take a look at Ripple again. I mean, there's not really much to show about Ripple. A lot of it already happened. Someone was asking about Ripple, and we can really see with Ripple to Bitcoin, like we can just see this coming up. So same kind of concept. This is our range. When we come up, we want to see it start right here. It's a little bit sketchy since we already had a nice bounce right there. But we can see essentially this is our range and this is what we're looking for. So if this ended a day up here, I would like it. So one thing to be careful about, we did end a day up here and then we pushed up a little bit and just crashed down. This is Ripple to Bitcoin. But if we do check here on, like, say, on September 8th, this was something where I was calling out. Where not just I was calling out, I think a lot of people could just see that this is just drawing the line to show the line and saying that, we could expect to push up to here anyway. So we never saw yeah, so this is what I wanted to see on it. I think I mentioned this video before, and we just pushed up, so it made sense when we got to this area. We just we got up here, we hit the top, and things got bad. Just crumbled down through all this because we didn't have this coming back down the next day for support. So this was kind of expected. This was that September 8th. So on that day, it was just really Bitcoin shooting up. There wasn't a lot that Ripple could do, and so we got the September, was it 17th? Yes, it was September 17th. So if we go back to Bitcoin, remember September 17th. Not just that, but this is when Bitcoin looked like it had a decent chance, like it wasn't going to fall through for that day at least. And then it looked like this kind of just got ahead of itself right there. And boom, 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 right? And Bitcoin didn't shoot up, so it didn't have to worry about Bitcoin just pretty much crumbling down and collapsing on it. And just to show, this would be the 17th on Bitcoin right here. All right. That's pretty much it. I hope that was pretty good for you guys. If you have any other questions, just leave them in the comments. If you have any alts or anything, just always hop in the stream. 9:15 to 4:15 Eastern every day. All right, take care, guys. Stay happy, stay healthy. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.